Ukraine continues to show its strength. On Monday evening, the court issued a decision to convict Russian General Kirillov in absentia. The Russian general is accused of being directly responsible for organizing the use of prohibited chemical weapons by the Russian army in the war against Ukraine on the battlefield. There have been numerous cases of vision loss. This same general organized this in Syria. The next morning, Ukrainian counterintelligence or spies in the center of Moscow blew up the general as he was leaving his home with his assistant. An explosive device was planted in the food delivery scooter's basket. The scooter was parked by the entrance to the residential building. Everyone in Moscow was once again very frightened. Ukrainians previously eliminated only traitors of Ukraine in Moscow. Now anyone involved in crimes against Ukraine must fear when leaving their homes. Europe has recognized the target as legitimate and is surprised by the constant eliminations organized by Ukraine. Propagandists on television scream like pigs that this is a terrorist act and terrorist methods. It is funny to hear such things from a terrorist country that launches rockets at peaceful residents every day, at maternity hospitals, or at the most famous hospital in Kyiv, where children are treated for cancer. In other words, Russia wants to kill children with rockets before cancer does. The general was known for his methodical appearances on television about US biolabs in Ukraine, where supposedly chemical mosquitoes and geese are developed that spread diseases to Russia. It is hard for a sane person to believe this, but all of Russia believes it, and these idiots, terrorists, and maniacs seriously make such statements regularly at NATO meetings. Russia has already occupied 15% of Ukraine's territory. Russia has, of course, found no evidence of such laboratories because such technologies do not exist. And I think it is also not a fact that such a method of biovirus distribution makes sense. If anyone produces weapons, it is Russia, and they kill people in England, as was the case with the Salisbury incident. But their drug business is even worse, as they spread it around the world. Assad exported 10 tons of cash in dollars to Russia. The main source of income was a factory that produced cocaine for the poor. The owner of the factory, from which they seized the pill production factory 10 years ago, shows everything that was done there. This cheap drug was sold in Europe too. How did Syrian drugs end up there? In underground prisons, they found people who had disappeared across the country since the reign of Bashar al-Assad's father, often not even remembering who they were. Torture and sexual violence are the tools used by such regimes, often perpetrated by the Russian army. The Russians messed up when Ukraine invaded and has been occupying Russian territory towards Moscow for half a year now. The Russians messed up with the special operation and the quick submission of Kyiv. The Russians messed up in Syria, and they messed up by not being able to defend themselves against long-range strategic weapons. Now, they are helpless in the face of the start of a series of liquidations. The Russians messed up. Putin messed up. So, what conclusions should be drawn? My opinion is that they will not agree to negotiations and want war with Europe. If they do, then Europe will be ready for war in 5-10 years. The war will not be with Ukraine then, but with Europe, and you will regret everything you didn't do for Ukraine. There is plenty of evidence over the last 3 years in the occupied territories of Ukraine. This is pure evil with which one cannot negotiate, but this world and the governments of Europe and the USA are blind to the suffering of ordinary people. I am convinced that if we want to save ourselves, we need to become a people's force in this world. It is fashionable to initiate a project for the liberation of human destiny.